Hello and welcome to this video where I read viral fantasy books. We're going to start off with The Serpent in the Wings of Night. I'm so excited to read this one. It's a vampire fantasy. I think it's going to be enemies to lovers, and the main girl in it, she is not a vampire, but she was adopted by a vampire king. I've gotten like almost halfway through The Serpent in the Wings of Night. Now I know why it's called that. It's because the serpent is the girl in it, or like that's her nickname, and then the guy in it is a vampire with wings, like the vampire in these books. This is where I'm at right now. I feel like I've been reading so many romances that reading a fantasy like this is kind of a lot right now. I need to get myself through the part of like the world building and just like get myself excited with fantasy again in that sort of way. I'm really intrigued to see where it goes. It's not one of those books where I'm like, I can't put this down, but it's one of those ones where I'm like, I could read this all day. And with the world building, some parts I skim over if they're kind of boring me, and it kind of just works out fine. But I feel like when I start reading more fantasy books, like the one after this, I feel like I do that less and less. Right now in the book, she's competing in the trials. She's in the trials because she was a human who's adopted by a vampire king. So she's in the trials to like prove herself worthy and just like be treated as an equal. And she's human, so she's with like all these vampires, and she just made an ally with one of the guys and a girl, and she doesn't trust either of them. She's really fighting for her life. Like she's almost died multiple times now. I'm getting to the part where her and one of her new allies are just starting to train together. So a pretty good part in the book. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes because there's a definite romance striking up. Like 8:33 p.m. I just finished The Serpent in the Wings of Night. I overall really loved this book. I ended up giving it a 4.5 on Goodreads. I think it was like a really solid fantasy book, and I enjoyed it a lot to where like I really didn't want to stop reading it. I have that feeling where I want to read the next one right now. Like if I had that book next to me, I'd start reading it. A con for me is that it was a little bit slow to get into, and there were like maybe two other parts in the book to where I like wasn't completely into it, and that's kind of me having like a 5-star read in mind. Like I'm thinking if it was a 5-star it would have these things, but because it didn't have those, it doesn't make it like a bad book. It's just not one that I'd give like a 5-star. I was a little bit unsure of where it was going with the ending, but now I can like see where it's going, and I'm so excited. It's like kind of a trope that I really like. I won't say it because I feel like that gives too much away, but I'm really excited to see where it's going. I feel like it has a lot of the sort of tropes that I like in a fantasy book. I'll say like some that are not spoilers. It's like enemies to lovers. I like trials, and when the main character is like competing in trials, and I like when that kind of like bonds the two main characters together. I like that her dad is the king, and there's like that whole different coming from different places perspective. They come from different places, so they have all these assumptions about the other one, but then they kind of realize how it actually is once they get to know them. The main guy in this, a little bit, like his vibe really kind of reminded me of Rhysand in A Court of Thorns and Roses. Or like that whole series. That's who the main guy in this kind of reminded me of. The girl in it, Aurea, is just a really good fighter. She's been trained her whole life to like kill vampires or just be able to fight for herself. I really loved her character. I felt like I really got a good feel for like who they were, and I just kind of felt like they're a fully formed character in my head, which was always really nice. And I feel like sometimes I don't notice that a book's doing that, but it's just doing it, and it's like really good and it's effortless, because I'll certainly notice like when it's not doing that, but this one was definitely doing that. I love when the characters have like really strong beliefs and things that they're fighting for, and this book definitely had that, and I just love that in a character. Aurea is like a great example of that. It's one of the best vampire books I've ever read. I don't really remember that many vampire books that I've read, but this one was just so good. It's super slow burn. There's bits and pieces of romance throughout the entire thing, and it is like a big part of the book, so definitely it feels like a romantasy. It ends on a cliffhanger, so be prepared to really want to read the next book if you read this one. One of the cutest quote things that I saw in this book, the love interest guy in this, he always watches the sun when it's like just rising, I think, or just setting. I don't know. He watches it whenever it's changing because it doesn't like hurt him as much, and he just misses the sun. And then later on in the book, he like watches the sun like really closely and like just as, I don't know, like with a lot of emotion on his face, and it's just described like very poetically. And then later in the book, she's like, his eyes softened and they flicked back to me. I really did try not to notice or care that they drank me in the same way he drank in sunshine. That is just so cute. Now we are going on to the next book. One Dark Window is the next book that I'm going to be reading. I'm super excited about this one. I've heard a lot of things. It's been on my TikTok For You page like a lot lately, so I'm very much prepared. Okay, I'm not even going to read the back. I'm just going to tell you what I know about this one, is that it's a girl who like a monster lives in her head and it takes over like whenever she needs it. This is like not for fact. I'll read it and like tell you more about it, but like this is like my guesses right now.
Cold sweat, I was in a nightmare, searching in the dark, but I couldn't find you. There were footsteps coming down the hallway, but when I turned around, it wasn't you. I was looking at myself, I couldn't see my face, but deep down I knew it was true. Shadows handed me a question: if I ever lost you, what would I do? What would I do?
Reading update, I'm on page 170 of One Dark Window. I feel like I'm really in the midst of a lot of stuff happening. Like I'm not quite in like a bunch of the action parts yet, I don't think, but it's to the point where I'm like really interested in the plot. Also, I just saw my name in this book, which doesn't really happen often. That really just got me so excited. Hopefully this character isn't evil. I'm really liking it so far. It could be a 5-star at this point. Right now it's like just pretty good. It's not like blowing my mind right now, but it feels like it could be that good like by the end of it. I think that the magic concept is really interesting. It's like a infection that people get, and their like veins turn black or something when they're using the magic. But if someone's infected, then they get killed, because I think that magic starts to make them go crazy a little bit. But the main girl in this book, she's infected, but she hasn't gone crazy or anything. Also, people like don't know that she is. She randomly like gets strength from this monster and like all these other skills, but people just don't know that. And there's a romance happening as well. I really like it so far, and the vibes are really nice too. It's one of those ones where I just enjoy my time reading it.
Woke up from my premonition, I couldn't feel your warmth, I couldn't find you. So I flipped out, I ran into the kitchen, I found a little note saying I'll be back soon. Relief came with a little breath, with nothing else to do, I headed back to...
The monster in Elspeth's head is like hyping her up right now. I hope that the monster's like not bad and is always like just good with her, because that'd be such a bummer if there's actually a bad monster, you know? Because I feel like they've like formed some sort of friendship at this point. I finished One Dark Window. I loved it. I want to read the second one so bad, but I literally have so many things on my TBR right now that like I have planned to read that I just shouldn't. I shouldn't, but it would be so good to read it right after. But for this video, I want to read like a different book that's not in the series, so that I'm like showing my opinions on multiple Vira books. But I really enjoyed reading this. Like this was such a good experience, and there was like multiple times where I did get completely sucked in for like hours reading it non-stop, because it was just like a page turner. It doesn't feel like one of my favorite fantasy books ever. However, depending on how good the next one is, it could be like one of my favorite fantasy series, because this was just like a really good foundation for the next book that's already out. The ending is such a ginormous cliffhanger. Like it's just like an ending that it's like, how is this gonna turn around? Like what is going to happen next? That like the feeling of like wondering what's gonna happen next is so strong. I really liked the entire concept. I liked the characters. I just kind of liked everything about it. I liked the world that it took place in. One thing was that this happens a lot in any book, but the main character, she was like not saying so much that I feel like if she did say it, she told people things, like it would actually help her rather than hurt her, but she just like didn't, which like I understood her character's way of thinking, but it was still just like a little bit frustrating. I really liked the romance. It wasn't like my favorite romance. I feel like it has room to grow. Like I feel like in the second book it's gonna get way better, because I feel like we've broken past the surface and it feels like more than surface level, but it feels like I know the characters, but it doesn't feel like I know them well enough to be like really liking the romance. But I don't want that to make it sound like I didn't enjoy the romance, because I really did. I just feel like it hasn't gotten to that point where it feels like I feel so connected to it yet. The next book that we are reading is going to be Powerless. I have been seeing this one all over the place. The front says hunted, hunter, destined for each other. I love that type of thing. It looks like I'm about to read another enemies to lovers fantasy. I'm on chapter 8 of Powerless and I'm really liking it so far. It took me like a second to get hooked into it, but I mean already on chapter 8 and I'm really liking it. The romance is like so good so far. Like it's very flirty but like enemies vibes, but they're like also a little bit fond of each other, but then also she kind of hates him. It's interesting because like he's such a charming character, but at the same time I feel like some of the decisions that he makes, like some things he does, yeah, they're good, but I feel like he could be so much better morally. I guess he's like morally gray, but it's like he's also really charming and like flirty and stuff, so it's like interesting in that way. I feel like a lot of times if they're like really cold at this point in the book, then they won't be like flirty like that, like if they're that like morally gray, but not even just morally gray in like a justified way. Like I feel like he's kind of awful a little bit, like for the things that he's doing. Because it stated in the beginning of the book, I feel like I could say this tidbit, but basically he uncovered like a family who there was like an ordinary whatever, and they like ban it, or they kill all of like the ordinaries who don't have any powers, because they think it makes other people like not have powers anymore or something, and then they banish whoever's like harboring them to the like scorches, which is just like a desert, and they'll probably die. He literally banished an entire family, and they were hiding a little girl who's like an ordinary, and he didn't kill her because he's supposed to bring her to die, but instead he reunited her with her family in the scorches. But like they're all gonna die, and he even said that in his head, like they're all gonna die anyway, now they're just gonna die together. But like he could have not found the girl, like he could have just like pretended like he didn't see like the rug, and like I don't know, like he tried so hard to find her, and like I was thinking maybe he does that because like he knows someone's gonna find them anyway, but like I don't think he does know that. Like I find it kind of crazy that he did that. Like I don't know, like now I'm supposed to like what, like him or root for him? Like I don't know if I'm going to, but at the same time that's such a lie, because I just said like I like him, but like actually like when I think of it like logically, I'm like I don't. Like that was awful that he did that. Like he can't come back from that just by being charming. But in this romantasy, I'm like, okay, I like him and I don't like him at the same time, you know what I mean? Which I guess is exactly what I'm supposed to feel, because it's what the main character girl in this feels. The girl in this, Peyton, she is like in the slums as they are called, and she is a thief. I am more than halfway through Powerless. I'm at such an exciting part right now. I'm so excited to read. I like just sat down to read. Let me just get something out of the way, okay? I self-tanned with like this tanning lotion. Like I did that. Guess what happened? Guess what happened? So just ignore that. Oh my gosh, that was a plot twist. Oh my goodness, I like this plot twist a lot. A lot of times, you know how the like main character in a fantasy book has chemistry with everyone, like so much chemistry with everyone. Oh my god, I'm trying to not read like ahead the lines. I'm just gonna read the last little bit of Powerless because I've already really finished the book, but they have like a little preview of the next book in the end, so I'm gonna read that. That was really good. Like it was a very good book. I felt like I could not put it down towards the end. I think out of the 3 books I read in this video, I think it might have been like the most addicting to read. If you were thinking about reading any of the books in this video but you're unsure, I would say read them, because I have not been let down. It's also like my favorite type of genre, so it's like it's just been an amazing reading time for me. She's crossed her claustrophobic in the book right now, and it's like making it hard for me to breathe. It's like whenever a character is like stuck in somewhere small, I feel like I just like need to take a moment. Okay, I wanted to give my final thoughts on these fantasy books, so we'll start off with the first one that I read, which was, oh yeah, The Serpent in the Wings of Night. This one was really good. It's definitely not one of my like favorite fantasy books ever, but it's like A tier. You know how like there's like the top one's S or something, and then I don't know what they actually stand for, but and then the second one's A. This one's like on A. Like it's not like my top, but I would definitely recommend it to people because it was just so good. I'm 100% going to be reading the second one, and I cannot wait. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'd recommend it to people, and I loved the enemies to lovers. I loved the like badass girl MC in it. That's a reoccurring theme in all these books that I've been reading throughout this video, which I love because they always do the crazy stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, like yeah, you go. But then like if I was in their position, I would not be doing any of that stuff. It's actually crazy the things that they live through. That being said, super entertaining. One Dark Window. Okay, so I know the second book of this one just recently came out, and I'm definitely getting it. Ooh. I'm definitely getting it because this one was so good. This one is definitely like very different. It has like such a unique feel to it. I think this book was really nicely written. I think the story was so cool. It was definitely like very dark and gruesome and like kind of not like horror-y, but like there was definitely some like scary imagery that was in there. I'm really interested to see where this one goes because it left off in a place where I was like, okay, where are we gonna go from here? Lastly, last but not least, Powerless. This one, I was actually thinking about it so much when I wasn't reading it, and I felt like I could not put it down. Like it had that quality that makes books like some of my favorite books ever, where it's just like so addictive to read. Like it's so, what's the word? Like you feel like you're immersed into the world so much that you need, like you're so invested in what happens next. Like this one definitely had that quality to it. It was just giving, you know, all the fantasy tropes that are so fun to read about. Like it had, okay, this one's actually not one of my favorites, but it did have a little bit of a love triangle, kind of. I didn't really love that one, but there's like a reason behind it. It had like the ball gown and the dagger stuck to the thigh. If you know, you know. It had enemies to lovers. It had rebellion. It was very, very inspired by, yeah, it was very, very inspired by the Hunger Games. There was like a lot from the Hunger Games that was in this book. Definitely, if you like the Hunger Games, this has a very similar vibe, but the core, like the reason behind the Hunger Games and all the politics are very different between the two. I feel like the Hunger Games was like saying so much, like it was making so many statements, whereas like this one's more just like getting lost in the fantasy world, and it's like romantic-y based. I would definitely say the romance was like the main part of this book, and it really felt like that when I was reading it, although the other plot was interesting, and mainly because I just really liked the main character going out and doing cool things and having little like side quests. Like I really love that in a fantasy book. This is like a debut, and it's the first one in the trilogy that it's going to be, so I do feel like there could have been like more in-depth world building with like some of the concepts and stuff, but I also think there's like endless potential for this book and like the series that it's going to be. Like I feel like it can be so much, and it already is like that good and that fun to read with like the first book. It just like, it's going to be so good. Super fast paced. I think this one's my favorite out of the whole video of the books that I read. I've had so much fun with this video. It really feels like going back to my roots when I read these types of fantasy books, because this is like what I grew up on. That is the end of this video, so thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos, and I will see you in the next one.